Conjugate of a complex number. Let us start with taking one complex number. So if z is equal to a plus bi is a complex number, then we know that real part of this complex number is a and imaginary part of this complex number is b. This we have already discussed in previous videos. So you can consult the video on simple the definition of complex number. There you can know about this notations real part and imaginary part. The real part of this complex number is a and imaginary part of this complex number is b. Both are the real numbers. A and b are the real numbers. So a conjugate, which is written in this form, we write z as a complex number and we put a bar over it and we call it a conjugate. A conjugate of a complex number is a complex number obtained by changing the sign of the imaginary part. We have already discussed about the imaginary part. If we change the sign of the imaginary part, that means if we change the sign of b in a complex number, then we get a conjugate. So for example, 2 plus 3 iota, the conjugate of which will be 2 minus 3 iota. What we did, plus b plus 3, or at the place of b we have 3. So we just change the sign. We put a negative sign before 3 or before the imaginary part and we get a conjugate. So 30 iota, again 30 iota is actually 0 plus 30 iota, where 0 is the real part and 30 is the imaginary part. So we change the sign of the imaginary part, we change from positive to negative and we get the conjugate of this complex number. 3 minus under root 7 iota, the conjugate of it will be 3 plus under root of 7 iota. We change the minus sign to plus to make it a conjugate. So general formula of the conjugate to find the conjugate is, if a plus b iota is the complex number, we just change the sign of b. A minus b iota would be the conjugate. Now properties of complex conjugate. Let's see what are the properties. If z is a real number, then the z is equal to conjugate of z. What does it mean if z is a real number? If z is a real number means z is equal to a plus b iota. If z is a real number, it means b iota is cancelled out. How can it be cancelled out? It can be cancelled out only when the value of b is 0. So we will get only a, the real part, or z can be a real number. So here, if z is a real number, then z is equal to conjugate of z. And the conjugate of a real number is the number itself, because we don't get the opportunity to change the sign. For example, z equal to 7 plus 0 into iota, which is a real number. So conjugate of z will be 7 minus 0 into iota. We just change the plus sign to minus, but we get the same result. So the conjugate of a real number is the number itself. So now come to the second property. If z is an imaginary number, if z is an imaginary number, it means it has no real, actually it is purely imaginary number. It means the real part, so z is equal to a plus b iota, where a here in this case, where z is an imaginary number, in this case a is equal to 0. So z is equal to 0 plus b iota is equal to b iota. We don't write 0. So in the case z equal to b iota, the conjugate of z will be negative of z, negative of a complex number. For example, z is equal to 0 plus 3 iota. So which is 3 iota. So conjugate of z is 0, this plus is changed to negative sign or minus, 3 iota, which is minus 3 iota, and minus 3 iota can be written as minus z, because z is equal to 3 iota, so minus 3 iota will be minus z. Simply it shows that the conjugate of an imaginary number is the negative of the complex number. Now the third property is conjugate of the conjugate of a complex number is the number itself. We do the conjugate two times. First we find the conjugate of this number, and again we find the conjugate one more time. So if z is equal to a plus b iota, then conjugate of z will be a minus b iota. We change the plus to minus. So then again if we find the conjugate one more time, so this is the previous result we got. Again we find the conjugate, so finding conjugate is actually changing the sign. We'll change this sign to plus, and a plus b iota as we know is z. So hence the conjugate of the conjugate gives the number itself. Hope you have liked this video. Please subscribe to CBSE Plus. Thank you.